Welcome back to our channel where we share updates and untold stories about Catherine, Princess of Wales, and her royal family. Today we bring you some news. At 76, King Charles's heartbreaking confession over the most loved one in his life. After a lifetime spent under the relentless scrutiny of the public eye, King Charles III has, in the deepest and most public way, made the final confession regarding the love of his life. He has done so at the venerable age of 76, after having lived his whole life under the scrutiny of the public eye. With the weight of history and the symbolism of a crown, it was not a confession that was made in quiet tones or divulged in an interview that revealed all, but rather, it was a confession that was proclaiming itself. Charles has finally and irrevocably validated a love that once scandalized a whole country, wrecked a fairy tale marriage, and shaped the direction of his entire life. He has done this by ensuring that Camilla is anointed as his queen. Once heralded as Europe's most desirable and charming prince, the future King Charles went through a succession of romances that filled endless pages of newspapers and fueled worldwide intrigue. These romances were the source of the future king's enduring popularity. From public dates at polo matches to whispered rumors of covert rendezvous, he was photographed beside a parade of renowned, gorgeous, and aristocratic ladies. Other women in the procession were also photographed. Charles was the personification of the fairy tale prince, leaving hearts aflutter throughout the Commonwealth and beyond. His attractive looks and the renowned title of Prince of Wales made him the perfect example of the ideal prince. In spite of everything, there was a heart that was in continual anguish, aching for a connection that went beyond the limits of etiquette and public expectation. Everything heart was hidden under the ephemeral gloss of transient love relationships and a wedding that was witnessed by almost 1 billion people. It was a need that developed into the primary and often sad motif that would run throughout his life. Following a lifetime filled with significant personal ups and downs, the king has finally revealed the truth that is inside his heart. It is more than just a constitutional formality. It is the powerful and quiet completion of a love story that was previously the missing and most contentious piece in the painting of a man whose personal sentiments once threatened to destroy the United Kingdom. Queen Camilla's accession is more than just a constitutional formality. One must first have an understanding of the golden cage in which the king was first fashioned in order to comprehend the significance of this contemporary conclusion. The making of a monarch is described in The Gilded Cage. From the day of his birth on November 14, 1948, Prince Charles Philip Arthur George's destiny was predetermined by a throne that was both sparkling and oppressive. Young Charles was familiar with the icy stone walls of Buckingham Palace, as well as the unblinking eyes of nannies, guards, and royal advisors. This was in contrast to the other children, who were allowed to play freely in the sun, write with crayons, and fall on the grass. Rather than being a time of unplanned delight, his upbringing was marked by a regimented approach to discipline. Because a future king had to be sure-footed, it was strictly forbidden for him to make any mistakes. Because a king is expected to maintain a state of apathy, it was forbidden for him to display public rage. Because the emblem of a country must present constant fortitude, it was absolutely forbidden for him to weep in public. By the time Charles had a clear handle on his personal identity, he was already in the process of learning how to become an institution. The perfect positioning of his hands on a table, the respectful inclination of his head while greeting a dignitary, and the measured tempo of his feet as he crossed a corridor were all examples of the manner in which his life was molded as if he were a piece of art in progress. Because of this unrelenting quest for perfection, there was no tolerance for the typical mistakes that come with being young. A mistake was not only a mistake, rather, it represented a possible danger to the stability and image of the whole monarchical system across the entire kingdom. Being a pawn, being painstakingly trained for kingship, a vocation that sometimes appeared to exclude the right to be completely human. Prince Charles spent his life in that gilded seclusion, less as a youngster and more as a pawn. This rigorous shaping manifested itself in his schooling as an extension of it. It was Prince Philip Charles's father who made the decision that his son should go to Gordonstoun, a boarding school in Scotland that is famed for its austerity and which Prince Philip himself had attended. Known for its attitude of harsh self-reliance, icy showers, and tough physical tasks, the school was intended to provide students with the opportunity to develop their character. Charles, who is sensitive and introspective, went through a time of extreme loneliness and sorrow which he would later characterize as colditz in kilts. He was not regarded merely as a student, but rather as a symbol that needed to be tried and toughened. In later years, while he was attending Trinity College in Cambridge, where he majored in history, anthropology, and archaeology, the examination persisted. He was unable to just sit in a cafe with his friends and discuss philosophy without being conscious of the scrutinizing gazes that were directed at him. His personal feelings, the people he chose to be his friends, and particularly his love leanings, were all things that needed to be thoroughly examined and handled. The title of heir to the throne, which has the weight of 1,000 years of royal history in the United Kingdom, was bestowed upon him. Naturally, with this luxury was an enormous amount of material comfort. It was a privilege for him to travel in chauffeured automobiles, with the doors held wide for him to reside in gorgeous palaces and to obtain the best education possible. However, at the same time, he was restricted. There is the potential for a sneeze to become a headline, and a grin that is a little mistimed might be seen as a political message. The life of Charles was a beautiful symphony of rules, rituals, and scripts that were created in advance. He had to embody kingship in his breath, his movements, and even in his quietest moments. He did not only learn how to be a king, he had to learn how to be royalty. It was not only renown or rank that was the price of the throne, rather it was the gradual loss of one's own identity, which began at an early age when one was unable to fully appreciate the sacrifice. A chance meeting and a love that was forbidden to be had. When Charles was living this life of prescribed duty, he, like any other young man, yearned for something that was both straightforward and profound, genuine love. He wanted a companion who would see the man, not the prince. Someone who would laugh at his unique brand of humor, understand his fears, and provide a refuge from the enormous weight of his destiny. He craved this person. At one point, it seemed as if he had located that individual. A lady called Camilla Rosemary Shand, who was 23 years old at the time, was presented to him during a polo match that took place in Windsor Great Park during the summer of the year 1970. She was self-assured, smart, and had an earthy appeal that took her in a completely different direction than the debutantes who were generally in his group. During their first encounter, she famously broke the ice by saying, "My great-grandmother was the mistress of your great-great-grandfather." This phrase made a reference to their common ancestry, which was aristocratic, if not royal. So what do you think of it? The link was immediately felt and had a strong impact. It was with Camilla that Charles had the sense that he could be himself an ordinary man rather than an heir who was burdened by a throne. Having a similar sense of the ludicrous, a passion for the countryside, and an easy closeness were all things that they had in common. Together they shared laughter and dreams, and for the very first time, Charles had a sense of being alive that was simple and genuine. But this joy was not going to be a permanent state of affairs. Feelings were not the foundation upon which the royal family and the institution that it represented were formed. Duty, lineage, and most crucially, image were the foundations upon which it relied. Camilla, Despite her allure and ties to the aristocracy, was not considered to be an appropriate spouse for the child who would one day become King of England. Not only did she not possess a title from a high-ranking ducal family, but she was also not considered virginal, which was a harsh but essential requirement for a future queen. She did not fulfill the severe unwritten requirements that were prevalent during that time period. Furthermore, prominent royals, notably Charles's powerful great-uncle Lord Mountbatten, were of the opinion that Lord Mountbatten, who was 22 years old at the time, was too young to settle down. It was expected of him to release her from the facility, and with a heavy heart he went ahead and executed it. Camilla accepted a proposal from her longtime on-again, off-again lover, Army Lieutenant Andrew Parker Bowles, in 1973. This occurred while Charles was away on an 8-month naval assignment in the Caribbean. When Charles returned, Camilla was in the Caribbean. In the moment when Charles learned the news, he was overcome with grief. His love for her had not diminished. Rather, he had been misled into believing that he could not love her in an open and honest manner. Being born into royalty came with a number of hardships, and this was one of the earliest and most severe of them. Due to this choice, a profound and long-lasting scar was left. For years, Charles was plagued by the loss of Camilla, but he eventually came to terms with his destiny. It was his belief that he had to put his royal duty ahead of his own feelings. The Wedding of the Century, featuring a facade inspired by a fairy tale. Immediately after Camilla tied the knot, the quest for a prospective princess got on in earnest. There were stringent requirements, including the fact that she had to be of noble origin, a Protestant, and most importantly, a virgin. A bashful young woman named Lady Diana Spencer, who was only 19 years old at the time, became the center of attention in the year 1980. It seemed that she fulfilled all of the requirements. She was beautiful, reserved, and had a reputation that was never damaged. She was the daughter of an earl. The romance between them was a whirlwind that took place under the heavy scrutiny of the media from all around the globe. It was announced that they were going to be married on February 24, 1981. A reporter posed the apparently benign question, "Are you in love?" during the subsequent televised interview that took place and was shown on television. The answer that Charles gave was far more instructive and, in hindsight, chilling, whatever in love means. It was a moment of intense embarrassment that indicated the deep-seated misgivings that were under the surface. Diana, who was flushing, promptly said, "Of course." The wedding of Prince Charles and Lady Diana Spencer, which took place on July 29, 1981, was a spectacle experienced all over the world. The actual fairy tale that was taking place in St. Paul's Cathedral was seen by an estimated 750 million people who tuned in to watch it unfold. With the hopes and aspirations of a whole country in her heart, Diana, who was just 20 years old at the time, was a vision in her billowing ivory taffeta gown. Charles, who was dressed in the ceremonial attire of a naval commander, waved with the admiration of a prince. The outside world saw it as a miraculous event. However, the reality that existed inside the walls of the palace was quite different. At the very beginning of the marriage, there was a collision of two worlds and personalities that were quite different from one another. In her own broken upbringing, Diana missed the care and comfort that she longed for. She was emotionally open, full of the warmth that comes with being young and longing for these attributes. She yearned for a companion who would show her love, share her laughter, and provide her with support as she navigated the heavy demands from her new life. Charles, on the other hand, was a result of his strict royal upbringing in which emotions were repressed and duty was given the utmost importance. It was difficult for him to supply Diana with the emotional connection that she so sorely required, since he had been training him to keep his own emotions hidden. What made this basic difference even more difficult to overcome was the unavoidable shadow of his history. In spite of the fact that he had feelings for Diana, his heart had never completely released Camilla Parker Bowles. Camilla continued to be a presence in his life that was unassuming yet unwavering. She was more than simply an old acquaintance. She was his confidant and the only one who knew the specific difficulties that he was under. They never lost the relationship that they had formed during a period of pure love. Diana was able to pick up on this right away. Her husband's heart was not totally hers, and she was not oblivious to the knowledge that this was the case. As she encountered the reality of a golden prison that was devoid of genuine love, the dazzling light that the married princess had been radiating gradually started to ebb away. It wasn't only the sense of being alone that caused her grief. It was also the misery of being invisible, of not being heard, and of having the impression that she was an invader in the love story of another person. During the War of the Waleses, a marriage is put to the test. By the middle of the 1980s, the fairy tale had already started to fall apart in public. Both Charles and Diana were terribly unhappy because they were unable to escape the roles that ultimately left them feeling empty and alienated. Approximately in the year 1986, Charles restarted his personal contact with Camilla since he was unable to find any peace in his marriage. The romantic relationship that existed between Charles, Diana, and Camilla went on to become one of the most contentious royal scandals in the history of the modern era. Formerly enamored with the pair, the media now took pleasure in spreading rumors of strife between them. A bombshell book written by Andrew Morton and titled Diana, Her True Story was published in 1992, which caused the issue to become far more serious. The book revealed the extent of the princess's sorrow, her struggles with bulimia, her attempts at suicide, and her great feeling of betrayal over Charles's continued romance with Camilla. These revelations were made possible by the use of confidential interviews with the princess herself. All of the monarchy's foundations were shattered. Diana was solidly supported by the people who had accepted her as the people's princess in the past. The issue became much more widespread the following year, when the records of a phone call between Charles and Camilla in 1989 that had been covertly recorded and was very personal were made public. These tapes became known as the Camillagate tapes. Both of them were exposed to international derision and condemnation as a result of the explicit nature of their chat, which proved without a reasonable question that they were having an affair. In the year 1994, Prince Charles agreed to participate in a televised interview with Jonathan Dimbleby in an effort to improve his reputation in the public eye. In the document, he apologized for his adultery and said that he had been loyal to Diana until it became irretrievably broken down, us both having tried. Although the document was supposed to be an act of repentance, it merely helped to validate Diana's story. Her own terrible volley was Diana's response to the situation. The phrase that would eternally characterize the tale was given by her throughout the course of a covert interview that took place in 1995 with the BBC's Panorama program. Diana responded with a calm and painful certainty to Martin Bashir's question about whether Mrs. Parker Bowles had a role in the dissolution of her marriage. She said, "Well, there were 3 of us in this marriage, so it was a bit crowded." It was that one statement that cemented Diana's reputation as the woman who had been mistreated, and it was the sentence that sealed the destiny of it. Both her bravery and her vulnerability attracted the attention of the whole globe. On the other hand, Charles had feelings of conflict and misunderstanding. He was unable to give up the lady he loved deeply, but he was also hesitant to cause her any additional suffering. The divorce was formalized in August of 1996, after the pair had formally split in 1992. Queen Elizabeth II was the one who encouraged the couple to file for divorce. A country was left in utter disbelief, and the monarchy was confronted with the most significant challenge it had faced in decades. The fairy story had officially come to an end. Tragedy, retaliation, and a rehabilitation that is kept quiet. However, Diana's fame continued to increase even after the divorce was finalized. After being liberated from the confines of the royal fold, she continued to devote herself with fresh vigor to her work in the field of humanitarianism. With her work with HIV/AIDS patients and her campaign to outlaw landmines, she advocated for topics that were formerly deemed taboo. Her work with these patients was particularly noteworthy. Not only did her legendary walk over an active minefield in Angola in 1997 attract the attention of people all around the world, but it also highlighted her extraordinary ability to leverage her reputation for the greater good. She was a symbol of kindness all around the world. Due to a tragic event that occurred on August 31, 1997, her wonderful journey was cut short. Diana, Princess of Wales, along with her companion Dodi Fayed and their driver Henri Paul, was murdered in a high-speed vehicle accident in Paris. The accident also claimed the life of their driver. In response, the whole globe expressed a level of shock and anguish that had never been seen before. As a result of her passing, a substantial amount of public outrage was aimed firmly at the royal family, and more specifically, at Prince Charles. Several people believed that he and Camilla were implicated in the years of agony that had afflicted Diana's life. This view is shared by many others. Camilla became one of the most despised women in Britain as a result of the aftermath of this catastrophe. She was the other woman, the person who had ruined the beloved people's princess. She was the person who had wrecked the household. For Charles, the way ahead seemed to be completely inconceivable. His realization of the gravity of Diana's influence on the globe came too late, and as a result, he was left with a profound sense of remorse. Despite all that happened, his heart never took Camilla away from him. According to reports, he conveyed to his assistants that his connection with her was non-negotiable. When Charles and his advisors were confronted with an enormous amount of public animosity, they determined to restore Camilla's image by launching a public relations effort that was slow, thorough, and accomplished with mastery. The first thing that should have been done was to present her to his kids, Prince William and Prince Harry, in the year 1998. The first public appearance that Charles and Camilla made together as a couple was in 1999, and it was a meticulously arranged picture opportunity that took place outside of the Ritz Hotel in London. A distinct side of Camilla was gradually shown to the general public over the course of time. She was not the plotting villain of the tabloids. Rather, she was a pleasant and down-to-earth lady who provided Prince Charles a feeling of calm and contentment that he had never experienced before. While she worked conscientiously without seeking the spotlight, she took up patronages for causes that were near and dear to her heart. These causes included osteoporosis, which had affected her own mother animal welfare, and literacy. From Duchess to Queen, a love that is proven to take place. An announcement of the engagement between Prince Charles and Camilla Parker Bowles was made by Clarence House on February 10, 2005. They were welcomed with a combination of acceptance and lingering animosity when they heard the news, but the most important thing was that Queen Elizabeth II gave them her complete approval. The couple tied the knot in a low-key civil ceremony at Windsor Guildhall on April 9, 2005. This was followed by a service of prayer and devotion at St. George's Chapel. The decision that Camilla made to not use the title of Princess of Wales, to which she was legally entitled, was made out of respect for the feelings of the general people and the lasting legacy that Diana left behind. However, she was elevated to the position of Her Royal Highness the Duchess of Cornwall. As she continued to serve the monarchy with calm dignity and unflinching devotion for her husband, she did so for the following 17 years. Her welcoming demeanor, hilarious sense of humor, and unwavering commitment won her a well-deserved reputation. The ultimate and most important stamp of approval was bestowed onto the project by the Emperor himself. This momentous statement was made by Queen Elizabeth II in a telegram that she sent out in February 2022 to commemorate her Platinum Jubilee, when she said, "When in the fullness of time my son Charles becomes king, I know you will give him and his wife Camilla the same support that you have given me. And it is my sincere wish that when that time comes, Camilla will be known as Queen Consort, as she continues her own loyal service." She was referring to the fact that she would be able to continue her own devoted service. One may say that this was the pinnacle of vindication. Camilla had been able to assume her position at the very center of the monarchy because the Queen herself had opened the path for her to do so. The Last Confession, a crown acquired through love by the individual. On September 8, 2022, Queen Elizabeth II passed away and Charles gained the throne as King Charles III. In his first speech to the country, he talked of his darling wife Camilla, honoring her devoted devotion and the important role she played in his life. This voyage that spanned many decades reached its zenith on May 6, 2023, when it was finally completed in Westminster Abbey. To the delight of the whole world, Camilla and her husband were proclaimed queens simultaneously. The act was more than just a constitutional ceremony. It was the conclusive and unquestionable confession of King Charles's heart. It was a public proclamation that this lady, who had been ostracized and pushed into the background in the past, was and had always been the love of his life and his necessary companion. The tale of Charles and Camilla is a complicated tapestry that weaves together love, responsibility, sacrifice, and controversy. This is a story that calls into question the fundamental concept of a monarchy that is based on a fairy tale. In the minds of many people, the legacy of Princess Diana will always be a significant one. Recent occurrences such as Camilla donning a recreated replica of an emerald necklace that Diana once cherished continue to provoke heated discussion and illustrate the unfiltered feelings that the drama has the potential to elicit. The adventure, however, has come full circle for King Charles, who is now 76 years old. Not only does his rule bring about the fulfillment of his destiny, but it also brings about the vindication of his love. The crowning of Queen Camilla was his quiet, strong, and ultimate declaration that after a lifetime of waiting, of heartache, and of suffering public criticism, the love that he was once compelled to sacrifice had now taken its proper position alongside him on the throne. This was the ultimate statement that he made. It was a confession that came far later than expected, yet it was significant enough to rewrite the contemporary history of the British crown. Thank you for watching the video. Please let us know your thoughts, and goodbye for now. Bye.